Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sam's Big Blog. The first one since after the national championship game uh, came to an end, and the Yukon Huskies, first team since 2007, the Florida Gators, to repeat as national champions. They beat my Purdue Boilermakers in the championship game quite handily. So I want to give them a real quick evaluation of what I saw with that game. And if you watched Big Talk, you kind of know what my feeling and how I addressed how I saw that game. But I want to give a real quick evaluation of the game, and then I want to kind of get into the conference and how they overall did in the 2023-24 season, because there are a lot of ups and downs. There are a lot of great stories. There are a lot of unfortunate stories as well. So, but the national championship game, Dan Hurley, and I talked about this with Dalton on Big Talk just Friday. Dan Hurley had a great game plan, and he had the athletes that could execute that game plan to relative perfection. It's not easy. First off, let me say, Zach Edey is so much better than anybody thought, and would say. That's not me as a Purdue homer. That's me watching him dismantle the best defensive center in college basketball. And if you say, well, Klingon didn't have any help defense, doesn't matter. We didn't deem him the best, or he wasn't deemed the best defensive college center with help. He was deemed by many as the best defensive college center in the game. And Zach Edey got him in foul trouble so quick that he spent most of the game, or most of the first half, on the bench. And when he got four, Hurley just said, pull you out, and he sat the rest of the game. The game wasn't in doubt after that. But he got him in foul trouble about halfway through the second half. 4 fouls. He got 2 of UConn's centers in really quick foul trouble in the first half when the game was still in doubt. I contend, and I contend that it would be a fantastic idea for any NBA team to take a risk on Zach Edey. I can guarantee you he is more athletic than what he showed, meaning getting far enough away from the hoop, than he ever showed in actual games. I've seen him practice. Now, granted, it was just him messing around in practice, but he can shoot from 20 feet away. Is he the best shooter from 20 feet away? No. But he's also 7'4". He's not going to dribble drive off you, or going to take you to the hoop unless he works on it and gets better with his footwork. But there's plenty of time for that. He's got years. He has just finished year 6 of his basketball career. The man's 22 or 3 years old, and he's just finished year 6. By the time most people are 22 or 23 years old, they've played 16, 17 years, maybe. Not Zach Edey. He played hockey. He played baseball. Then he decided, you know what? I'm pretty tall. I probably should go play basketball. And he's darn good at it. Really good at it. I contend he should be a lottery pick. I contend he should be a lottery pick because you know what? He's got so much upside. Well, he's slow. Well, yeah, but you can teach and you can work on your footwork and your speed and your quickness. You can work on it. You can get better. He's not going to be the fastest, no, but he can get better. He should be a lottery pick. First pick, no. I'm not even going to argue that. But Donovan Klingon contended that he'll be a lottery pick. There was only one time that he was dominated in that NCAA tournament. Probably all year. That was the last game of the season. Yeah, UConn won, but it sure wasn't because Klingon gave some good defense. He played decent defense when he wasn't guarding Edey, but most of the time he was guarding Edey. He didn't have a greatly successful game on the defensive end. And it was because of who he had to guard, not because he just was having an off game. But that national championship game, very, very, very one-sided in the aspect of you didn't get the feeling that Purdue was going to stick around much longer after you realized that the role players weren't going to contribute a ton. Braden Smith ended up having a pretty good game, but he couldn't get anything going on regular either. None of the role players really could get anything going. And UConn did and won the game. Congrats to them. They played and executed a perfect game, in my opinion. Let's move on to the conference, the Big Ten Conference as a whole. And, there are a few things that you take into consideration. The Big Ten Conference hasn't had a national champion since the year 2000 when Tom Izzo and the Michigan State Spartans won the national championship against Florida in Indianapolis. And you look at Dalton was talking the other day that 8 times the conference has put a team in the national championship game, not just Final Four, the national championship game. And each time they have played a 1 seed. Every single time, including this last time when Purdue was a 1 seed, but they played a higher seed, the number 1 overall UConn Huskies. That's not saying poor Big Ten. You should be able to win. It just hasn't played out 8 times in 24 years. That's one every 3 years. Once every 3 years, there's a Big Ten team competing for a national championship since they won the last time. That doesn't tell me that it's a conference that is struggling. They're struggling to finish and get the title, but they're doing just fine in getting Final Four participants, finals, national championship game participants. We obviously have heard the big hullabaloo about, they obviously just are about getting teams into the tournament, because there have been years that 9, 10 teams have gotten into the tournament. That's not damning to the conference saying they're just getting those teams. We've talked about this many, many times. The style of play in the Big Ten Conference is very, very, very different from what a lot of the other conferences, big, small, doesn't matter, play. And when you run into a team that is really hot, James Madison, and against a team who was one of the better teams in the country for a good half of the season, went into a really horrible slide, and then started putting it back together come the end of the season and the Big Ten tournament, Wisconsin. James Madison was better. They played better. They were hotter. And Wisconsin just couldn't get it going. And they lost. That's what happens when you get in a lose and go home situation. You run into a team that's hot, and it can be the end of you. Look at Purdue last year. FDU was playing well. They were playing hot. Then they executed a game plan that was perfect. Coach Tobin even talked about it, after in the press conference after the game they beat Purdue last year. We play this game another 9 times. Purdue wins it 9 times. He said that himself. They hit the perfect storm. That's what happens. So I'm not damning the conference for not being able to win the national title. I want that national title win for the conference. I really do. But it's not a damning story to me if it means every 3 years we have a national title contender. We have a team playing for the national championship. Since the last time, IU's played for it once. Purdue's played for it once. Michigan State's played for it twice. Michigan's played for it twice. Wisconsin's played for it once. And I'm missing Illinois played for one. That's a big range of teams. Michigan and Michigan State have played it twice. So 6 of the 14 teams in this conference have played for a national championship in the past 24 years. That's not a bad outlook for this conference. And adding 4 more teams come July, the next basketball season, there's a chance. Mitch Cronin is a great coach at UCLA. He's great. He's been to Final Fours. He knows how to get there. Eric Musselman, new coach at USC. He just came from Arkansas. He's taken Arkansas to the Elite Eight a couple of different times. He knows what he's doing. He's a good coach. So there are chances that these coaches or these new teams, Dana Altman, good Lord, at Colorado or at Oregon, I mean, he took Oregon to the Sweet 16 this year. There are things that need to be looked at when the conference is looking up, even though they have not won a national championship in almost a quarter of a century. Next year it will be. Even if they win next year, it will have been a quarter of a century since they won. I apologize. Oregon didn't make it to the Sweet 16. They just made it to the round of 32. But Dana Altman is a very good coach. So let's look at quickly for a few minutes at some of the highlights of the season and maybe a couple of the lowlights as well. One of my biggest highlights and pluses for this season were the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Ben Johnson, they finished 9-11 overall in the conference. They were 19-15 overall with their regular or with their overall record. Ben Johnson was picked, and the Gophers were picked to finish 14th out of 14 teams in the Big Ten. They were 6 games better than that. They were 6 games better than the last place team. So to me, that is the biggest. That means Minnesota's on the upswing, at least for the time being. They've got a coach in place that's going to do some good things. I think it's a matter of them getting some pieces in and being able to really establish what Ben Johnson wants to do there in Minneapolis. And you may see Minnesota on the top half of the conference in years to come. The next one, it was kind of a low light at first because at the time that their coach was let go, they were next to last in the Big Ten, the Ohio State Buckeyes. They ended the season. Now, granted, they lost in the tournament, but they ended the season. I think it was 9-1, 9-2, 9-2. I'm going to go with that for right now. After they let go of Chris Holtmann, Jake Diebler earned the interim tag to be pulled from his name with the performance in which Ohio State did. They went on, and I believe they got to the Elite Eight of the NIT right before the trip to Indianapolis. They ended up getting beat there, and that's tough. I believe they got beat by Georgia, and Georgia went to the Final Four of the NIT. And Ohio State, they were playing very, very good basketball. They were playing inspired basketball. Whether it's just the adrenaline of let's do it for Coach Diebler, I don't know. But they're getting Michi Johnson's coming back. South Carolina, he came back to Ohio State. But Ohio State's going to be pretty decent next year. They're going to have some pieces that you're just not going to say they're not going to do well. You would expect them to be a good contending team, not necessarily for the overall Big Ten title, but it could be. You never know. But I think they could contend for that top Not the super bye maybe, but a bye in the Big Ten tournament to where they're 4th to 8th in there. The next surprise, there are 2 of them that finished 12-8 in the Big Ten conference. Nebraska and Northwestern. Northwestern lost Chase Audige. Barry got hurt, and they were left with just Boo Buie. Don't get me wrong, just Boo Buie. But it's hard to win games when you have only one player. So Boo Buie being the obvious guy for Northwestern, they had to find their role players and get their role players to start picking it up a little bit once Barry was out for the rest of the season. And a lot of people doubted whether or not they were going to finish very well. They ended up 12-8 in the Big Ten, which at that point, they 12-8 is pretty good. They finished 4th. They got a super bye. They finished 4th. But they got a win in the tournament. The other one, Nebraska. Nebraska, first time in this high in the conference since they joined. They've never finished in the top 3 in the conference ever until this year. Their biggest downfall, and honestly, if they could have put together a few more wins on the road, they only won 2 Big Ten road games. They played 10. They were 2-8. If they could have went 5-5, if they could have broke even and went 5-5, that puts them in second as a second best team in the Big Ten. That puts them at 15-8 and 5. If they could have just went 5-5 in the Big Ten. But Fred Hoiberg, co-coach of the year, really put the onus on making sure to play Nebraska ball, their style. Shoot the lights out, but still be able to hit from close and drive to the hole. Keisei Tominaga, amazing player, definitely someone that you could see him heating up if they were to get in a situation, and he did many times. And I tell you what, he was hotter than hot against Texas A&M in that first round game that they played. Texas A&M Nebraska didn't play any defense in that game. They gave up 98 points. They scored 70, almost 80 points, but they gave up 98. They might have scored 80, actually. That might have been mid-80s that they scored in. I don't remember, but they gave up 98. So that's hard to win games when you're giving up that many points and you are streaky. And Nebraska was streaky in their shooting, so it's understandable that they fell victim to that. But 2 huge surprises at the top of the conference with Nebraska and Northwestern. Illinois, we expected to be near the top. We Dalton and I were saying it could be Maryland, Illinois, and maybe Ohio State vying for 3rd, because we were pretty positive it was going to be Purdue and Michigan State in one of those. Purdue and Michigan State in either order, 1 and 2. That's what we expected. That's what we kind of intended for the season to go along. So we were looking at number 3. Who was going to compete for 3rd? Illinois was in that group. Instead, Michigan State didn't perform the way they should have. And they're on a disappointing highlight of the season. And I will say this. I'm disappointed. I think they're a disappointment in the fact that they just couldn't identify themselves. They had a great schedule. They got beat in opening night in the Breslin Center against James Madison. First game of the season. Now, granted, James Madison ended up 31-4 overall for the season, but we didn't know that at that point. We knew they could be good, but we didn't know they were going to be 31-4 at the end of the season. So it was a little bit of a surprise that they beat Michigan State, especially that they beat them in the Breslin Center. Later in the season, after they've kind of struggled, Michigan State goes and beats the number 10 or number 6 team in the country in Baylor, and not just beats them, throttles them. Absolutely throttles them. I believe at one point it was like 32-6. And they just kind of cruised the rest of the way to the victory. And then you've got them losing games that they shouldn't. They get swept by Wisconsin, then they lose to Northwestern, and then but then they win games that they shouldn't, that you don't think that they would. They beat Illinois. Like, they were a roller coaster. They were bipolar, as I like to say. They couldn't identify themselves. They couldn't get going in one direction and stay going in that direction. They just fell apart while still being a really good team, which is why they got the nod to the tournament over the likes of Iowa and over the likes of IU, who finished with the same records, essentially, overall. Another big disappointment is the Maryland Terrapins. I would have bet money. If I had money to bet, I would have bet money that Maryland would be sitting top 5, no lower than the top 5 of the Big Ten Conference. No lower. I wouldn't have envisioned a world where they finished 7-13 in the conference, 16-17 overall, and only 4 games ahead of Michigan in last place. Maryland tied with Rutgers for next to last in the Big Ten for 12th. Michigan finished last. I think we expected maybe a little bit more from them this year, but I wasn't expecting them to be really good. Michigan. But with Maryland, I just did not see the underperformance in which they had this year. There's a lot of upside going to this conference next year. Purdue loses the biggest one, the 2-time National Player of the Year and 2-time Big Ten Player of the Year, Zach Edey. He's gone. But Purdue has a lot of, honestly, this is a weird time for me because, honestly, you look at their roster and what they've got coming in, they're restocking. They're not rebuilding. They're kind of restocking. Now, they're going to have to figure out their identity a little bit because for the last 2 seasons, they have relied heavily on Zach Edey. But I think it's very telling that Braden Smith, a week after they were eliminated and beaten pretty handily by UConn in the national championship game, he's back in the gym already, trying to work towards getting better for next year. Look at Braden Smith. Now, granted, he had a lot of his assists, single season assist record for the Big Ten, Braden Smith. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of those that went to Zach Edey, but I think that Purdue has. Here's another thing: you're going to have to defend Purdue differently now. You can't just put a big body down in the low post and, well, Zach will, and then throw a double at him. You're gonna have to figure something out now. Purdue's big, one of their 2 7-footers that they will have on the roster, not to mention Trey Kaufman-Renn. Will Berg is mobile. He's a lot more mobile than what Zach Edey was the 2 years that he was the hub. I'm not even saying that Will Berg is going to be a starter for Purdue, but I think that when the 7-footer is in for Purdue, he's going to be able to stand out at the perimeter, and you're going to have to put a body on him, or he's just going to sit there and shoot him all day long as you're letting him. And if he gets hot, you're in trouble, because then you have to pull out to him, and he can drive around you. Is he the quickest? No, but he's a 7-footer who can drive. I think you have to look at Illinois, and we're still completely way too early right now to put a real assessment onto what these teams are going to look like come next November. But I think Illinois, with the movements that they've made up to this point, they lost a lot, but they've put a lot of things in. Plus, they've got some freshmen coming in. Purdue right now, they've lost a couple to the portal. They haven't added any from the portal because right now with their incoming freshman class, there's still 1 scholarship too many. So they're actually going to have one person either transfer out into the portal or one person decide that they are able to go to walk on. In the world of NIL, that might not be an impossibility to get a scholarship player to give up his scholarship and go to walk on. Because there is NIL money in there to be had that could help. I think you need to look at IU. They've done, especially if they get a Seagen. With what they've got already there to a team that finished 19-14. If you the people that they've added, the center from Arizona, I believe there was a couple other guys that moved in and transferred in. If a Seagen comes to IU as well, you've got to look at them as maybe being that top or one of the top teams in the conference as well. Michigan State, you kind of wonder about them. They're losing some people. They're adding some guys in, but where does Tom Izzo go? What do they do? Does he dip into the portal a little bit to try to maybe see if he can get some of those missing pieces that he's got? Ohio State's going to be good. Like I mentioned, they got Michi Johnson back from South Carolina, and they're looking like they could be a contender as well next year. Northwestern, Nebraska, I don't know what's going on with them. Will they compete? Maybe. But I can tell you one thing, it's going to be an exciting Big Ten basketball season next year when we tip off in November. I think we're going to be in for a nice, exciting one whale of a season coming up. This 2023-24 season was an absolute blast to cover Big Ten basketball. A lot of great things happened, and obviously, with my rooting interest team going to the Final Four and to the national championship game, and my ability to cover them in the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 games, and be able to talk to some of those guys and just watch how they celebrated, but yet not too giddily, I guess is the way to put it. They were able to get to Phoenix and get to that final game. It was an amazing trip this year, and I've been very blessed by God to be able to do this. And I look forward to giving much more analysis and my thoughts and opinions for whatever they're worth. You can feel free to argue with me. Do it civilly, okay? We're not gonna get into arguments. I have my reasons. You have your reasons. Let's be adults and talk about it civilly. I will be happy to chat with you. But go to Sam's big blog, SAMSB1G.blog.us, and find all of the content that I'm posting for Sam's big blog, be it the vlog version or be it anything typed out, which I haven't gotten anything typed out yet, but that is coming in the near future as well. Some things that will be typed out that you can't get from the Sam's Big Blog YouTube channel. That's where we are housed. Our videos are housed there and then broadcast to the website. But you can see all the videos on YouTube, Sam's Big Blog on YouTube, all the videos, and then anything else, including the videos, on samsbigblog.us. That's SAMSB1G.blog.us, Sam's Big Blog. Thanks so much for tolerating me during this seasonal wrap-up for the men's Big Ten basketball season. Again, it has been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to next year, and we'll see you next time on Sam's Big Blog.